Hey all, welcome back to another Figma tutorial. So in this one we'll be creating a table cell component, or more specifically two table components, one for the header and one for the body cell. We will not be creating any components for rows or columns or the table itself, rather just one cell component, and you can then use that component to either make a row or column or table. And also we're going to be using the two new Figma features. One is instance properties, and another one is preferred values, and I'll be showing you how you can integrate those into your cell component so that the component is easier to learn and a little bit more intuitive to use. So one thing before we get started is I recommend you have a few icons handy and ready to go. So here I just have one like for sorting up, down. This will be used for the header cell component. And then I have a bunch of these ones to be used for the body cell. We can begin by creating our first component, which is going to be the header cell. And this one is going to be pretty simple. We're just going to create a text layer and then give it like some padding and add a fill. So let's call this one table cell. Give it a darkish gray color. And then we'll wrap it in auto layout. And we'll just give it 16 padding. And then we'll give it a fill. So you can probably barely see it on the screen sharing, but there is I did give it a slight light gray fill here. So this is going to be our first variant, which is just a plain header cell without any icons, meaning without any sorting up or down. Let's first turn it into a component, and then we'll rename it header cell. Now we can add another variant to it, and we're going to name our property sort, and for this one we'll say none. This one will say up, and let's get our icon in. So we'll reduce the spacing a little bit, and then we'll vertically center it. And we can just make it a little bit smaller. One more thing we can do just to make this look a little bit nicer is give the component set itself an auto layout and then a fill. So now when we add another variant, it just neatly stacks at the bottom. So this icon, we're going to do arrow down. And now we'll just have to update this value to down. So now we can move to our second component, which is the table body cell. And for this one, we'll start about the same. We'll create a text layer. We can also name it table cell. We're going to wrap it in auto layout. And so we'll give it 16 pixel horizontal padding. But then for the height, we'll actually set it to fixed. And we'll do 56, and then we'll center it. And I'll explain the reason for that a little bit later. So after that, we're going to add white fill, and now we can turn this into a component, and let's call it body cell. And we'll switch this color to a dark gray. So now that we have our most basic body cell component, we can start thinking what other content can go inside body cell aside from text. And examples that I encounter most frequently are things like checkbox or badge or tag or icons, which we already have. So think what kind of things that you might encounter most and which you should have the variants for. And one thing that would be good to do now is to actually go ahead and grab those components if you have them already. So for me, it's going to be a badge and a checkbox, and then I'm also going to use the icons. And yeah, I'm not gonna go over how to actually make these components here, because this is something that's not exactly related to tables and could be used independently outside of tables. But yeah, I do have these components here, and I am going to include this in the Figma community file, so you could still grab them later. This is also the reason why I decided to do a 56 fixed height for the body cell, mainly because the height of the content itself might differ depending on whether it's a badge or a check or an icon or text, and I don't want the height of the cell itself shift if the height of the content is different. So because of that, I just set it to be fixed, and it may not always work, because if, let's say, we have a body cell where there is like a lot of text and it drops to the second line, then of course we want to use the padding to kind of make sure that the cell stretches out. But if in this case we assume or we hope that our cells are not going to get too big and we can just maintain them on the same height, then it would be better to have it fixed. So now that we have our content, we can start adding variants, and I'm going to do the same thing here with the header cell. First, I'm just going to give it auto layout and some fill. So from here, we're going to call this property content. This one is going to be text, and this one, let's make it a badge. And now we're going to take our badge, remove this, and our next variant is going to be a checkbox, and we'll take our check. And our last one is going to be icon. And for icon, we'll just make this one as our default one. So another thing that we're going to do specifically for just the checkbox and the icon is, instead of keeping them all the way over to the left, we'll center them so that when you have your table cell with an icon or checkbox, and if you were to resize it to make it a little bit bigger, it's not going to be stuck all the way to the left, and it's going to stay in the center, which works better for icons or checkboxes most of the time. Another variant that we may want our body cells to have is a very light gray fill, so that we can create tables that have striped alternating rows. And for this one, we first are going to create a new property, create a new variant, and let's say striped, and the default will say no. And then we're just going to copy this set, and for this one we'll say yes, and we'll also give it a very, very slight gray fill. So now we can test out our body cell component and see how we can improve it. So I'm going to drag the instance right here, and we can switch between different content variants. We can also make it striped. So when I have the instance layer selected, one thing that would be nice to do is actually be able to change the badge properties. So as you can see, we can have different colors. We can have like a checkbox or a check in front of it or a dot. But right now, when I have just this selected, there is no way to change it from here. So in order for me to change that, I would need to click into the badge instance itself, and then from here I can modify it however I want. So while it's certainly fine to like click into it and modify it, it would be nice to have a shortcut. And also, not every designer may know like, oh, I'm actually able, like this is a separate component inside, and it might have its own separate properties that I can change. And all in all, it would be much nicer if we would be able to surface those instance properties right here when we just have the body cell instance selected. And right now there is actually a new way to do this, and that's where nested instance properties come in. So what we're going to do is return back to the body cell, and we're going to click on the plus here, and we're going to go all the way down to nested instances, and from here we can click both the badge and the check. So what's going to happen now is that if we have a body cell that has a badge inside of it, it's going to have all the badge instances displayed here as well. So we can, let's say, add a dot, change it to be a different color. And one very nice thing is that even though with that we also added the check nested instance here as well, it doesn't show on this specific body cell because it's not a check. And but if we were to change it to a checkbox, then we're not going to see the badge properties, and we'll see the check properties instead, and we can check or uncheck it. This was the first new Figma feature that I wanted to cover. Another one is preferred values, and we actually can use those in our icon body cell instance here. So right now let's change this to an icon and just take a look at what's going on here. We have this trash icon by default, but let's say we wanted to change it to something else. First thing that we're going to do is we'll add an instance swap component. Let's call it an icon, and we'll just set it to trash. And now there's a little alert here, which means that we didn't really apply any layer to this icon. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our existing variant and we'll apply it to the icon instance swap. Okay, so now we have this new property here, and let's say we wanted to swap it. Now when we open it, we see all of our icons here. Our icon set is pretty small, but let's say we had like 30 icons or 90 icons, and let's say in our for the context of tables, we only used 5 of those icons, or there were some icons that were not intended for tables and we didn't want them to be used here. So what we can do here is use the second new Figma feature, which is preferred values. We're going to return to our body cell, and we're going to click edit property icon here. And from here, we're going to add the preferred values. Let's say we don't want arrow down or up to be visible in body cells, like that's reserved for the header cell and there's just no use case for it. So we're not going to select it. We also don't really have a use case for a checkbox, but we do have a use case for ellipses if, let's say, there are some certain actions that are associated with each row. So we'll select that one. Obviously, we want the trash icon and we want the times icon, let's say, if we want to remove a row and not delete it. So we'll select those 3. And now, if we return back to our body cell instance and click to swap, we'll see this new drop down here that says preferred, and we'll only see the instances that we selected on the main component itself. this was about it for the body cell component. Now we can test both of our components by trying to recreate a table. And feel free to either watch, I'm going to speed up that part a little bit, or recreate it along with me, or yeah, just skip ahead. So I'm going to copy this example here just to have it right in front of me, and now let's recreate it. So the way I typically create tables is that I do it column by column. So I'll start with this one, we'll do a sort down, and it will be by name. Now we can take each alternating row and make it striped. Then we'll copy this column, and now we can turn it into an actual table. This will change the sort to none, and this one will be email, and it will be pretty simple. As you can see, I also, when I first created the column, I set the width of every cell to fill the column so that I can either resize, or if I do change the, or if the width of the cell becomes too big, like all of the cells resize with it. So for next one, it's going to be a status. And we're going to go ahead and change all of these ones to a badge. And one thing that I wish you could do with nested instances is to, while you have several body cells selected, I wish the nested instance properties were still visible here, but unfortunately they're not yet, so we would have to go and modify each separately, but we do have a few repeats here, so we can just do archived, and then we'll just copy this one over to the last one, and then this one we'll make active. Let's actually give it a check mark, because why not? And then can delete this. And our last column is license type. And this one will be blue. Then we can delete all other ones. We should modify these ones. And the last one is just going to be an icon column. so we don't need anything for the header. And then let's swap it for a different color. Now we can adjust the width as we would like. And so yeah, that's about it for recreating a table, and all components seem to be working, and it's pretty quick and easy. If you want, you can take this one step further, and you can create a row component, column component, table component. There are also a few plugins you can use that are aimed at speeding up your table creation process. So yeah, that's about it for the table cell tutorial. Please let me know if you have any questions or if you have any tips that you use when you create tables. I will link this file in the description. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.